Sixth grade lesson 2.1 deals with fractions and decimals, and I know for some of you that gets your heart beating like, oh no. But you deal with these numbers, these sorts of numbers all the time. You have been since you were young, the decimals especially, because you deal with money, and our money system is based off of the decimals for the in between the full dollars amount. And fractions are simply another way to write that. So this year, I hope to get you more comfortable with dealing with fractions and decimals, recognizing what they are, and then being able to calculate them so that you're less nervous about seeing them. So I call them the in-betweens because it's like having in between $1 and $2. If I have $1.50, I have $1.50, right? These are exactly the same amount of money. $1.50 is exactly the same amount as $1.50. So fractions are simply another way to write decimals. There's just two ways of writing the same thing. And sometimes the calculation is easier to be done as a fraction, and sometimes the calculation is easier to be done as a decimal. So knowing how to move them in and out of each other is super beneficial. So number line wise, for some reason, the number line on this becomes troublesome for some people because they're not sure where it goes. Always you're looking at the whole amount, $1, and any fraction or decimal is the in-between portion between the next amount of dollars. So we're at $1 and a little more, $1 and a little more, but not enough to make two. So fractions and decimals are that in between. So it's $1 and a little more. So we're at the halfway point, which is also 50 cents. So if I were to graph it, 1.5 would live right there on the number line. So would $1.50, $1.05, 5/10, right? 10 cents for the dime. So 5/10. So $1.50 and $1.50 is the same value written in both a fraction or a decimal. Okay, so get comfortable with that. A couple things that I'll be pointing out to you too to help you get comfortable with this is certain decimal and fraction relationships that you'll just want to memorize. They're easy. You know them already. I just need to point them out to you. So if we're dealing with fractions and decimals, and we know they're the same value, and we know that sometimes it's easier to calculate with one than the other, depending on the circumstance, then it's going to be important for us to know how to convert one to the other or the other to one. So we'll be reviewing how to change decimals to fraction, and then I'll go over how to change a fraction into a decimal, because you're going to need to know how to do both. And once you practice it a little bit, it sort of sticks in your head and becomes nothing that's troublesome to you. So I do have in your notes that I have for you that you can print off these steps, changing decimal into fraction. The number to the right of the decimal becomes the numerator. So here's my decimal, and to the right of it is a 5. So I'm going to make that my numerator. The place value it ends in is the denominator. This is 5 ending in the 10th place. Remember, just a reminder, place values to the right of the decimals: tenths place, hundredths place, thousandths place, 10,000ths, 100,000ths, and so on. You're not going to see anything past the thousandths place probably for this lesson. Probably you're only seeing tenths place and hundredths place for the most part. Finally, the step is to reduce that. So I have 5/10 as my fraction, and so I'm checking to see is there a number that divides evenly into both of these? And yes, 5 does. So I'm going to go ahead and divide 5 by both to simplify it. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. And 0.5 written as a fraction is 1/2. That's hard to see. Let me just go ahead and make that a little bit brighter. Is 1/2. And I had mentioned earlier that there are going to be some fraction decimal relationships that I suggest you kind of memorize as matching each other. In your brain, it's probably easy to get memorized that 0.5 and 1/2 are exactly the same amount, just two ways to write the same amount. Half is 0.5. 0.5 is 1/2. I would work on getting that kind of trapped in my head. It's the middle point between 0 and 1, right in the middle at 1/2 or 0.5. You can think of it like money. If you have 5 dimes, that's 50 cents, and 50 cents is half of $1. Let's look at another example. We've got 1.25. Now, I don't have to do anything with this 1 because the 1 is already a whole number. So I have 1 and a little bit more. It's in decimal form, and if I want that in fraction form, I work on just that. I don't change the 1. So I have 1 and 25 cents. I'm going to rewrite that as 1 and some sort of fraction. All right, so now I'm just taking those steps from before onto this decimal part alone. This is 25 in 25 to the right of the decimal, so that's my numerator. The 25 ends in the hundredths place. Remember, tenths place, hundredths place. It ends in the hundredths place. Then all I need to do is reduce this fraction. Still, I'm doing nothing with this guy. He's a whole dollar. I don't need to do anything with him. So I notice that 25 will divide evenly into both of those. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And that gives me 25 divided by 25, which is 1. 100 divided by 25, which is 4. This is another fraction, 0.25. Sorry, let me just finish this thought here. I was going out of order. This is going to be the same as 1 and 1/4. 1 whole and 1/4. Again, notice I'm not doing anything with a whole number. I'm just finding the same amount, but in fraction form. So that's it. That's the only thing you're changing. You leave the whole numbers the same. Now, what I was saying before is this is another amount that you're using all the time and you already know this, but now that I make this connection for you, you're going to want to commit this decimal and fraction relationship to memory too. You know that when you have 25 cents, that's 1/4, right? 1/4 in coins is 25 cents. So what you're going to want to try to commit to memory is that 25 cents is the same thing as 1/4. And as I said before, you're going to want to commit to memory that 0.5 or 0.50, same thing, is the same as 1/2. And then there's one more that I'll be presenting to you. You might be able to guess already because it's tying in with our money system anyway. So let's look at this example here, 5.75. Again, I'm not interested in converting this $5. That's whole $5. I don't need to convert that. I'm just taking the decimal amount, and I'm going to use my steps to change that into a fraction. 0.75. 75 is my numerator. 75 ends in the tenths place, hundredths place. It ends in the hundredths place. Reduce the fraction. 25 divides evenly into each of those. And that is going to give me 3/4. So my answer, the same amount in fraction form, is $5 and, oopsie, 3/4 of a dollar. You knew this already. You knew that 75 cents was 3/4. If you went to the store and they asked you for 75 cents, you're handing them 3/4 if you have the quarters in your hand, right? I want you to tie those together as the third amount that you should memorize together. 0.75 is the same as 3/4 or 3/4. Those are equivalent values, just written in a different way. If you can memorize these three amounts as the same amount, that will help you in your math all the way through. And then as long as you can practice the steps on how to change any of the other ones, then you're in good shape. Okay, and sometimes you'll have fractions that you want in decimal form. So knowing how to do that is helpful too. And if you just kind of remember that a fraction is simply a number over a number, also known as a division problem, that should help you remember how to do that. So let's say I had 6 3/8, and we were asked to convert that into a decimal. Well, again, this is a whole $6. I'm not doing anything with that. That 6 is going to stay the same. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that 6, put it down here where I think my answer is going to go. I'm really just addressing this 3/8, 3 divided by 8. So I'm going to go ahead and do 3 divided by 8. We know the answer is less than 1 because if it were more than 1, we'd have more whole numbers. We'd have more whole dollars, right? So we know it's less than 1. So it should be, if this is a proper fraction, your first step should be like, it doesn't go in. It doesn't. You're so right. All right, so we're going to go 8 goes into 3 0 times. We knew that was going to be the case. Give a decimal and float it up. Put a 0 there. 8 fits into 30. Well, 8 times 4 is 32, so that's too high. So it's 8 times 3, and that is 24. I subtract and get 6. Bring down a 0. 8 goes into 60 7 times. That gives me 56. 4 left over. Bring that down. And 8 goes into 40 5 times. 0.375 is the same as 3/8. So that would be my answer. Now I'm going to tell you, for the purposes of any assignment you're doing for me, sometimes the book will say round to the nearest thousandths place. This would be the thousandths place. So you would go one more over to find if it's a 5 or higher to round that up, or below a 5 to round it, to leave it alone. I usually tell my students, don't keep dividing past the thousandths place, stop at the thousandths place and round it to the hundredths place, because that's rounded to the nearest penny. The hundredths place are our penny system, and for the most part in the real world we're using fractions and decimals, especially decimals, to refer to money. So if you wanted to, instead of going on and on, if this were not terminating, it did terminate, so that's nice. But if it were going to keep dividing, don't keep dividing. Stop at the thousandths place to see if it's 5 or higher, or below a 5, and then round to the hundredths place to that. So you might have written instead 6.38, because this 5 would have made that 7 go up 1. So $6.38. So I don't want you guys dividing forever, just to the point where you can round it to the hundredths place if it's something that goes on and on. And so that's it for this lesson. It's mostly just reminding you how to manipulate those fractions and decimals to be the way you need them. With practice, it becomes easier. It may be hazy at first. We'll practice some together if we need to. With practice, it does become easier, so be patient with yourself. Be fine with making mistakes. You will get this.